Hey, Entrepreneur Nation. Welcome back to another episode of Entrepreneur 101 from concept to exit and everything in between. Listen, we've got a great show for you today. I'm excited about this gentleman sitting on to my left. Brandon Rogers. Brandon is joining us, just newly transplanted to Denver, Colorado. We were just talking. I'm a big, Broncos fan, so he's from Minnesota, but we won't bug him about that. But anyhow, in Denver, Colorado. But let me tell you about Brandon. First of all, he's mid-20s. I won't go with his age unless he wants to, but he is the founder of Level Sportswear. It's the first asymmetrical sportswear brand. He's a former basketball trainer, scout. I know he played a little bit in college. He grew up in Tokyo, Japan. So there's a story in itself. And the big kicker here is Brandon started his company, A, during COVID. Why not? Nothing better to do. And B, no prior entrepreneurial experience or fashion experience. So, hey, who says you got to know what the hell you're doing? Got to have a background in what you're doing to get started in business. So, listen, with that being said, I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited about this. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share my background. When most people hear Japan, they see me and hear me talk, and they don't really believe me at first. But it's a cool backstory, and we can get into that. And then obviously the business as well, and kind of
Yeah,
an unusual time to start during COVID, but there's reasons
absolutely.
behind it, so we can get into that as well.
Yeah, and we're going to touch on that because everybody looks and while we're talking about it, let's just touch on it here for a second. Everybody, I know a lot of people who are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs. They're looking for that perfect time. They're looking for that right time. Oh, things just aren't in place, and that if you can do it during COVID, I mean, shit, you can do it anytime. So let's
Mhm.
stop with the excuses and let's see if Brandon can give some good advice here. So like you said, the backstory. And I always like to start with the backstory. I like to find out, pre-entrepreneur, who is this guy? What was his background and what led him to where he is today to become an entrepreneur. So let's talk a little bit about your background. You grew up in Tokyo, parents are international teachers. You take the story from there. Let us know.
Yeah, so let's actually back up a little bit further. My parents are from the Midwest. Both my mom's from Minnesota, dad's from South Dakota. When they met in college, mom kind of dragged dad overseas. They were both educators, and she said, "I want to travel. Let's go overseas." So they started in Rome, Italy. Were there
Nice.
for a few years, taught there for I believe 3 years, and then went to Malaysia, where I was born. Stayed there for a few more years, and when I was just over a year old, they relocated to Tokyo, Japan. So almost 2 years old. I go, from 2 till 18, graduate from high school over there. And looking back on it now, I didn't really pay much attention to the culture and the fashion and the style that was all around me. But I think that
Wow.
played a little bit of a role in how unique this brand is, and how
Right.
I'm always trying to test the boundaries a little bit, a lot like Japanese fashion
Right.
designers do,
Absolutely.
or even just Japanese culture in general. So it was pretty cool. I didn't really appreciate it growing up. Now I would love to go back and
Yeah.
you know dig my feet into everything that the culture has to offer. I miss the food a ton, and we can
Right.
talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I went to an American school, so you can tell by the accent it was surrounded by American expats.
Yeah.
So we got to travel a lot as a kid, which was awesome. I got to have a ton of really interesting experiences, and not a lot of what Americans get to experience. So I'm very grateful for that.
Right.
And we were so close to Southeast Asia, so we got to see anything from a first world country like Tokyo or Japan, all the way down to some of the third world countries out there. And it makes you really appreciative for what you have, and
Yeah.
really try to capitalize on your situation, so that you could be a lot worse. So graduated from high school there, and then went to play college basketball in the US.
Right.
There's a little bit of an in-between story there, which led me to my first job after college, which we can get into in a little bit. But
Yeah.
played 4 years of basketball at Marymount University. It's a small D3 school just outside DC,
Right.
in Arlington, Virginia.
Yeah.
Majored in business, concentration in marketing. Graduated from there in 2019, and started working for this basketball organization. And that's kind of what led me to realize the need for the products that we're going to be talking about,
Right.
that we sell right now. So
Right.
yeah, it's pretty interesting backstory.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we could take any part of that and dive deep into it. It surprises me that how in tune your subconscious can be. Like you say, you didn't really appreciate what was going on in Tokyo. I mean, you want to talk about, leaders in anything, they're always a few years ahead of us, and how much influence that may have had, even though you didn't realize it. So that's pretty cool that you got to
Mhm.
experience that. And so, were you bilingual at all? I know you went to American schools, but did you have the opportunity to learn any
Yep.
Japanese? Yeah.
Yeah. So I like to say, I like to tell people that didn't go to high school with me that I used to be fluent and I lost it since
Yeah.
coming here. But anyone that grew up with me would object to that a little bit.
Right.
I took one course after the AP Japanese level.
Okay.
So I could manage at the time.
Right.
And if I go back, it really, comes back to you like that. So anything like transportation, like getting around, ordering food,
Okay.
communicating with someone just about, how's the weather, or simple things still come back to me.
Right.
But I can't write the same essays that I did back in the day. So
Right.
it's true what people say. If you don't stay consistent with a language and
If you don't
speak it
use it, you
or
lose it.
immersed in it, yep, it's
Yeah.
super easy to lose. And I'm kind of regretful of that. But thinking what I've gone through thus far since college till now,
Yeah.
it would have been pretty difficult for me to find an environment to like keep up with it and
Right.
speak it. And
Right. Yeah.
the nature of what I do right now doesn't really require Japanese. It is a cool add-on. It's a cool party trick at this point. But
Right. Yeah.
um, I think if I have some time in the distant future, I want to try and learn Spanish or Chinese at some point. So
Right.
maybe add to the repertoire there a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So you ended up going to college for business, you said. Was
Yep.
was it there that you kind of thought, you wanted to be an entrepreneur, or it was really just, hey, I got to take something. I'm playing basketball, so I got to take something. But did the entrepreneur bug bite then? Was it earlier? Was it after you got out of college? What happened there?
Yeah. So that's a great question. I actually went to college. I was more focused on marketing than I was on the business side. So
Okay.
I work for a marketing agency full time right now. And that's kind of what I wanted to get into, but I was more leaning towards like, I was very inspired as a kid to make commercials, and I
Okay.
loved humorous commercials. I loved the NBA commercials and the NFL, the fantasy football commercials.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Love that stuff growing up. So I was dead set on getting into marketing and then working for a large agency or even a franchise that would develop that. Obviously, as a kid, your dreams don't always amount to what
Right.
they
Yeah.
are, So
Yeah.
took a few turns there. I stayed in basketball after college a little bit, but now I work in marketing full time. But I'm actually considering going back to school again for either industrial design or mechanical engineering, because from building this business and growing up, I always loved to build things. My dad is a big DIYer.
Okay. Yeah.
They have since retired and now live in Minnesota, on a lake house, and our garage is full of wood. So
Right.
he's a big craftsman. If we
Yeah.
need something fixed in the house, he's going to fix it. And so I kind of grew up with that. And I'm realizing more and more now that I've always loved to build things. I love to build businesses. I love to
Right.
build products, unique products, right? Products that stand out in a market, in a saturated market,
Yeah.
and products that provide value for people. So I tested the waters with this business, and I'm loving it. So I think I am leaning more towards going back to school for, like I said, industrial design or mechanical engineering. So
Right.
that's in the future. I don't have any set plans right now. I have a few meetings with professors at schools in the area, but it's still pretty preliminary.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Hey, and there's lots to be said about constantly learning. And I think
Mm-hmm.
as entrepreneurs, we always are, because we're always looking, whether it's to better what we're doing or branch out into something else. So
Mm-hmm.
when you've got that, desire inside you to constantly learn, that's what pushes entrepreneurs, to be successful, not only in one area of life, but in their personal life, in their business life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. So you came out of college and you were working for a recruiting agency, and you traveled
Yep.
around, recruiting people. So from what I understand, that's kind of where you got the bug for getting into the fashion industry as far as the sports apparel. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's kind of we got to take it in two parts, right? So the
Sure.
entrepreneurship part was actually the bug hit me on my senior year of college.
Okay.
I had a friend who I met, I think it was early junior year of college, who was younger than me. I think he was a year or two younger, and he had come over from Australia, and he was a very technical founder. And so he started a web design agency in Australia, and it grew so big that he was able to relocate. He was taking classes at Marymount and Harvard part-time, and his business was worth multi-millions.
Right.
And he proved it to me. He showed me, and I was just blown away. And he kind of lit that flame, and I was just so appealed to the autonomy, the ability to bring things from just an idea, like a drawing on a napkin or a paper, to life, whether it's digital or a physical consumer good. And so I just dove in head first. I started listening to every podcast I could get my hands on. I checked out every book starting from the Marymount Library, and now I have, I think, 3 different library cards from the 3 different states I've lived in the last 4 years. So I'm accumulating, and I'm kind of proud of it. But just getting, like you said, consistent education, right? Lifelong learner. So and I on that topic, I've picked up a number of tools along the way, right? I had to teach myself the full Adobe suite. So Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere Pro, I use all of those tools to run the business on a consistent basis. And then, more towards like the engineering side, getting into like 3D CAD design, self-taught in that. I work in SEO full time. I know I have a wonderful team that I work with, and they've taught me a lot, and I've taken a lot of classes and coding courses on the side. So you really have to be completely self-taught, even paid media, right? I'm going to start running ads for my business, and I have to learn how Facebook Ads Manager works and TikTok ads accounts. So it's daunting at first, but if you try to take it just one day at a time, it's a lot more manageable. And one of the things that I always recommend to founders, whether you're, mid to late stage, or even just like thinking of an idea, always try to document what you do during the day. And so, and it doesn't have to be detailed. It can just be, pull out your phone, go on the notes app and hit text to speech and just talk about what you did that day, whether it's personal or business related. And so I've been doing that for the past 2 years, and I had to actually offboard a lot of that those transcriptions to a Google Doc account, because my notes app was starting to glitch out because I had so much text
so much in there, right?
Turns out it's over 200 pages now. And so when I go to look back on a year ago, I can't believe how little I knew, how much I've taught myself, how much I've learned from just 1 year, right? And you think it's so difficult to just like learn how to build a Shopify store, or learn how to run some ads, or create, content. So much easier now. I just laugh at myself looking back. It's you have to be a lifelong learner. So digressing, but that's how I got into entrepreneurship, was through that friend of mine. And then after college, I started working for a basketball recruiting agency. They also ran camps. So the whole business model was, we would contact athletic directors at international schools all over the world, which is how I actually got recruited to Marymount back in the day. So that's how I had a relationship with the business and the founder already. So he hired me, and I'm now in charge of setting up camps all over the world. So I was going anywhere from Dubai, Bangkok, Thailand, Ecuador, Colombia. We had camps in Barcelona, South Africa. It was awesome. And Japan as well. I got to go back to Japan. So it was there in those camps that I started to notice a lot of high school boys and girls basketball players cutting their full-length compression tights with scissors. And a lot of them can't cut very well. So it was pretty obvious.
Right.
And so I'm thinking to myself, I'm really into entrepreneurship. And I felt like I could do that as a first product. There's a lot of things, like if you're going to build a fintech company or a B2B SaaS product, you have to be pretty technical, and you have to know what you're doing.
Right.
An apparel brand is a pretty good way to ease yourself in. And, I say that now, and I was fortunate that I was so naive at the time, because it's ridiculously challenging now, but I'm glad I was, because I took that leap. And through those athletes, I was able to get that extra push that I needed. Like, oh, okay, if I build this, there's actually a market already for it, right?
Right.
And then I started to notice NBA players doing it and WNBA players doing it. And even still to this day, I am still trying to contact Jason Tatum on the Celtics because he wears cut compression tights.
Right.
And I have ins with Javante Green on the Chicago Bulls, so we've got him some pairs, and we have Dane Smith in the Professional Lacrosse League wearing some products. So we're starting to make
Nice.
inroads into professional sports, but I knew that the market was there, and then I had to tackle the challenge of, okay, got the product, got the concept. Now, how do I get a prototype that I'm actually proud of and people will actually pay for and not return? So
Right.
that's
Right.
how those two, the fashion or product side and then the entrepreneurship side kind of meshed together. And then the pandemic hit, and I was like, I'm not traveling anymore. Might as well, stay busy with this concept and try to find some manufacturers wherever in the world. And I went through, I think, 7 or 8 different factories from Australia, Sri Lanka, China, Pakistan, and then the US as well.
Right.
So it's, and a few more I'm missing, but it
Yeah.
was
And
a it was a
sorry,
tough,
and
tough
and
battle.
and I want to stop you there before we go further, because I do want to get into that. I want to take, let's take it from as you see, the kind of the tagline of the show is from concept to exit and everything in between. And you've
Mm-hmm,
done that, not so much the exit part, because that's something a lot of entrepreneurs don't think of, right? Why the hell
mm-hmm.
would I want to think about selling my baby? But when the big boys come knocking, sometimes the check has a lot of zeros on it. So, but you know what, you said a couple of things there that I wanted to back up on first before we get into this. And
Mm-hmm.
one, I'm impressed that somebody in their mid-20s know what the hell a library card is, because I didn't know 20-year-olds actually entered foot into a library, so kudos to you. But one thing you said there that I think is very important, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize, is when you're living it day to day and things aren't moving, shit's not progressing, whatever, it can be frustrating. But like you said, you didn't realize how much in 1 year you had actually learned and how much you had accomplished. And you probably wouldn't realize it if you hadn't taken those notes. So I love that idea. I think that
Mm-hmm.
is great. I'm going to recommend it to people where, like you said, we've all got one of these damn things, oh, you can't see it, but the phone, right?
Right.
Sitting by our side. Utilize it. It's not just for scrolling damn TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff. Utilize the tools. So simple. Make notes of your day. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people do journaling, but that is just as easy. And
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that you shared that, because then, like you say, you look back and you say, holy shit, I'm a little further than I thought I was, and I'm a hell of a lot smarter than I was a year ago.
Yeah.
So good on you. I appreciate you sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to get into, what, like you talked about manufacturers, and I want to talk about how you actually, got a hold of some of these people and where you even started looking. But so you got the idea, and then COVID hit. What did your family think? When you told them, "Hey, I'm going to become a fashion guru," what did your family and friends and think about your idea?
Well, so I think I'm pretty rare in that I have incredibly supportive parents and grandparents.
Right.
So, and my grandparents have, you know, invested a
Okay.
little, like, more on the donation side to
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
fund the business a little
Yeah.
bit. So, um, because like I said, I was a recent college graduate. I had $2,000 in my bank account when I started the business, and
Right.
most of that had to go to rent and food, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because I'm an ex-athlete, I spend like $500 a month on food
Yeah.
alone. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
um, yeah, so they were incredibly supportive, and they were so supportive that my mom actually helped me. She's a seamstress, right? My dad's on the woodworking side. She does
Okay.
the sewing and
Yeah.
arts and crafts side. So she was able to save up and buy a new sewing machine that we were able to purchase some Nike and Under Armour because I wanted multiple versions. Tried to get some Adidas, but the stores where we were at in Minnesota didn't carry any Adidas long compression, so
Okay.
had to just settle for Nike and Under Armour. And we actually cut one of the legs off right above the kneecap, and then she was able to hem it so that it would function as a similar product as what we sell today.
Right.
And very, very, rough draft of what I was going to end up selling, but I was able to use I think we did 3 Nike and 3 Under Armour products, right? We bought 3 pairs of tights each. We had 6 prototypes to then send to the factories all over the world. And that was their jumping off point, as opposed to just sending them a drawing and getting some crazy, you know what I mean? So like similar material, similar stitching patterns, same waistband, same heat press tag, stuff like that. So they were incredible. I actually am prototyping some new products that we're going to be releasing later this year. And I just got back from visiting family for the 4th of July, and I brought those prototypes back, and I handed it to my dad, and just freaked out. He's like, I'm going to buy some of this for myself, and I'm going to wear it around the house. So they're incredibly supportive. And like I said, my grandparents too. We used to have a podcast on the associated with the brand, and there's just not enough time for that anymore. So I had to stop it after season 3. But my grandma's listened to every episode. She texts me questions about it, how I did the research and everything. So she's awesome. And then they were also, they're close to it. They're long retired. So they were able to help me fund the business a little bit in the early stages. So the most supportive
that's
that
awesome.
I have. It's awesome.
That's great. It sure makes it easier. I mean, when you have people in your corner, when times get tough, and they're your cheerleaders, that can definitely make a big difference. Because unfortunately, too many people don't have that, and that's when they end up giving up, because there's nobody there believing them and pushing them and saying, you know what, you got this. So so that's great. So let's talk about, okay, you got the prototypes, right? Because like I said, people reaching out to manufacturers, they may not have the slightst clue. So you design the prototype, and then you send it out to different manufacturers. So kind of talk to me about that. How do you figure out who these manufacturers are who are going to even think about doing something like this? And how do you approach them? You say, hey, my name's Brandon. I have no clue what I'm doing, but make something like this for me.
So going back to my naivety, right? I'm thinking there's tons of brands that make compression gear, yoga pants, leggings, whatever. This should be no problem. All we're doing is just cutting a leg off. Man, was I wrong. That they had some troubles. Anything from like questioning my sanity to wondering if it's for amputees to, even the material. Like I bought a book called Textilepedia, and I had to learn about stitching patterns, and I had to learn about different materials and folds, and custom waistbands and heat press tags. And I've designed our heat press tag that we use right now. I had to design an Illustrator, so I'm learning Illustrator at the exact same time. So it sounds overwhelming, right? But again, if you take it one day at a time, if you just write a list of to-dos and then don't go to sleep until those to-dos are checked off, you'll get so far in a year. So my first step, like anybody, right? I have a drawing of what I want. And I think I was also pretty good with Photoshop at that point. So I had a rendering on a digital rendering on Photoshop. I go to Google and I just search up like clothing, apparel brand manufacturers near me. And I first found this woman in Philadelphia. And so I think one weekend I just drove up there. I think it was 3 or 4 hours to get there from where I was at, just outside DC. And she agreed. She emailed me back, agreed to meet with me. And I showed her the concept, and she messed with it a little bit, but she didn't really, her, I guess, sewing machine or whatever she was using to develop the prototype wasn't as good as I could sell. So I was like, okay, this is just a one woman show. I'm going to need to find a larger company, if this is a larger factory, if this is going to work out. So long story short, I through Google and networking, right, I was able to find a factory in Pakistan and Australia, both of which I think contacted me through Instagram. So going back to like documenting your journey, I got some really good advice early on to do so, but I was told to do so on social media. So I had been documenting my journey. I've since archived those because I want the brand to look a little bit more polished now. But back then I was documenting my journey, and obviously everyone comes out of the woodwork. Every factory comes out of the woodwork when someone online is promoting that they need help building up apparel, right? So I was getting messages from all over. So I was like, all right, I'll take a chance on this one factory from Pakistan and one factory from Australia. end up getting ghosted by the factory in Australia. Not sure what happened there.
Huh.
And then the factory in Pakistan sent me some samples, and they were just absolutely terrible. The material was, I think, 100% spandex, and it was very glossy and,
Right.
not what I was looking for. And
Yeah.
the sizing was all off. The waist was huge, the calf was huge, but the thighs were really tight. So it was kind of
Right.
weird.
Right.
And I just gave up on that one because I was like, if I'm going to try and it'll take me hours if I'm trying to correct this, right? I need to have someone that has already built products like this
Yeah.
so that I can just give them this slight iteration and they can hit the ground running. So, long story short, Marymount's one of Marymount's most popular majors is actually fashion merchandising. So I had a lot of friends that now work in the fashion industry. And so I
Right.
reached out to a few of them and I said, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Do you have any advice? And one of the girls who I'm really good friends with sent me a blog. Like, I think it's an aggregator site. And it's basically just where everyone can gather. I can't remember what the site is called, but
Yeah.
what I do remember is there was one company on there that was consistently writing blog posts about developing your first prototype internationally and doing it on a budget. And I noticed that they were writing a ton and they were like experts. And I was like, this is incredible. This is who I need to contact. So lo and behold, I reach out to them and they quote me at, I think it was like $3,500. We'll get you a prototype and that'll be your fee to us for the initial 200 units. And I would still have to pay the factory for those 200 units as well, but their flat fee was 3,500, and we'll
Right.
help you get set up. So I was like,
Right.
okay, that's fair enough. And I like I said, I had to take a little bit of investment or donations, I guess, from
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
grandparents
Yeah.
to help fund that because I didn't have that kind of money yet. So we do that. We start working with a factory in Sri Lanka, and the factory was fantastic. The only issue was I couldn't have any direct communication with the factory, at least initially, because it had to go through
Right.
this sourcing company, and they were
Right.
based in Austin, Texas. And they're a fantastic company. So if anybody out there listening to this, I will recommend them. It's Alice James Global, AJG. They're fantastic. I think they've expanded. They've hired more wonderful designers and um, people that can help you start your business. So
Right.
reach out to them if you're thinking of starting an apparel brand. They're awesome. But then this is when the second round of, I guess, COVID was going through Asia. And I got that we were able to iron out a prototype that I was proud of. And it was amazing that day that I opened up
Yeah.
the package from them, and my logo that I had designed was on the pair and it was on the waistband. And I was so pumped because it
Oh
had been
yeah.
almost a year since I had drawn that initial prototype to when I got a prototype, not even the bulk order, just the
Right.
prototype.
Right.
So then it was about, I think, a month or two before they had the 200 units, and that arrived. And again, I'm freaking out because this is a real deal now. I just
Yeah. It's
spent a lot of
shit's
money.
getting real. Yeah.
Like, I spent a lot of money on this. And so
Yeah.
at the same time, right, you always got to be proactive. As that bulk order is coming, I'm building a website and I'm using those initial prototypes on models to get media for that website
Right.
and
Okay.
working
Yeah.
out the copy and everything. So I had to learn how to use Shopify, and there's tons of great videos on there. And I will say that Shopify support is unmatched. It's incredible. They used to have phone call support. Now I think it's just you can just message back and forth on their website or email them. But
Right.
back then it was phone call support, and so they were able to just walk me through everything on the phone. It was incredible. They were incredibly
Nice.
helpful.
Good.
So got the website built, got the 200 units in, and start selling, and they sell out in about 3 or 4 months. And I'm not doing any, I still am not doing any paid advertising. So that was all through TikTok, SEO, and word of mouth. And
Right.
I was going to as many AAU tournaments as I could get in the door with. So
Right.
then the second round of COVID, like I said, hits, and this factory closes down for good. They're not going to
Oh
reopen.
no. Oh
Yeah.
shit.
So now I have to go through, and AJG was great. They didn't charge me extra to find a new factory and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they were able to help me find a new factory in China and go through the whole prototyping process again. And people don't really
Right.
understand what that's like. I originally thought I was going to send those samples I
Send what
had
you
made
already had.
with my mom, right,
Yeah.
to this factory, and they would copy it and send it back. Well, if you do it the right way, right, which is what we do now, you have to get fabric swatches, and you have to make a tech pack, and you have to get all of the sizing right for the sizing, all the different SKUs that you're going to sell. And
Right.
that all takes shipping back and forth. And it's about $150 to ship to China and back. And that adds up if you're doing 10
Yeah.
different, 5, 10 different iterations. So
Yeah.
you get a prototype, and then, no, we want to tweak this, and then let's
Back it goes and
tell
then comes
them,
back
send
and
it, send a new one, right? So
right.
it's crazy. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
So that was a big learning curve for me. But then we get set up with this new factory in China, and things are going great. But their MOQs now aren't 200, they're 500, and I want to do men's and women's.
Right.
So that's 1,000
That's a
units,
thousand
and
units. Yeah.
that's like pushing over, like close to 15 grand, right?
Right.
And so now I am kind of freaking out because this day is coming. And I'm also at the same time looking for mentorship. So one of the other great resources that I will recommend to people out there looking to start a business, or running a business and need some mentorship, is look into SCORE, SCORE. It's a government program.
Right. Yes, I've heard of it.
Gives you free mentorship.
Yeah.
And the mentors I have are pretty good. Obviously, if you can find someone in your industry with actual experience in this, running the same business that you have, definitely go with that route.
Right.
But these, like I said, you're going to get what you pay for, and it's free. So they've been a great help. And one of the things that they helped me do was, one of my mentors right now ran a business, an apparel business, and he had a lot of manufacturing contacts overseas. So I have now transitioned from that factory and transitioned from Alice James Global, right? Documenting everything that they've taught me and that I've
Yeah.
done, so I can
Yeah.
use it now on my own and not have to spend that money for a consulting company to help me.
Right.
Now I work directly with our factory overseas. And so now I'm able to use that tech pack, and I'm able to, get all the SKUs right, all the designs right. If they send over a prototype, I, just take photos of it and put it up in Illustrator, and then provide my critiques, and then just send it digitally to them. So it's a lot more efficient and a lot cheaper, than going the old route. So
Right.
now I have this great relationship. I just message the factory on WhatsApp. Obviously, there's a time change to account for, but
Yeah.
they're pretty good. I either talk to them in the morning or late in the evenings, and I'm usually up working anyway, so it's
Right.
perfect. Um, and so we've been able to really crank out some products. Whether it's like the single leg tights, we're going through iterations, even more iterations with them, or our Ace compression shirts, which we're redesigning, and we have women's that actually I think just arrived today, so I need to go pick those up, and it'll be it'll be a little bit before we get those on the website, because we have to take photos and everything, and get
Right.
everything
Yeah.
built out. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's so much more efficient, and I wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't take notes
Right.
on that first round. So long story short, it took about 11 months, 7 manufacturers or 7 factories, and I think over a dozen prototypes from back and forth with all of those. And I actually have a photo. I think I took it at my old apartment, just outside DC. I
Yeah.
laid them all out on the ground, and then I had to take a panorama
Right.
photo, because there was just so many prototypes.
Yeah.
And it's so awesome to look back on, because I was very naive back then, but I'm so happy that I started that journey, and now I'm able to look back, and I have so many recommendations for people if they reach out to me, just to help them
Yeah.
overcome issues and not even have to face the issues that I went through back then. So it's
Right.
quite a long story. Sorry to
Oh no. Hey.
there.
No, that's great. I mean, and as much as you know now, in 5 years we could have this conversation. You'll say, I didn't know anything back then. Right.
Exactly.
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
We think we're learning. We think we're learning. Well, you are, but we're always learning. There's
Yep.
always more. And it's great because you don't know what you don't know. So you had to start. You had to have that middleman. You had to, and then you were smart enough to take in the knowledge and realize, okay, yeah, now I can cut out that. It's all costs, right? Bottom line, you got to do as in the beginning as entrepreneurs, we have to do everything ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
When you can learn as much as you can to continue to do it yourself, that's just, money in the bank, so to speak. So
Yeah.
no, that's great. So let's talk about, now you've got, the product, you've got the website. Did you reach out to any actual national retailers or anything like that to try and get your products into the stores and things?
Yes. So that was a pretty long and stressful, upsetting journey that I
Right.
went on.
Okay.
And I've since settled down from doing that. And I can get into a reason why after I tell the story. But
Yeah.
I reached out to anybody from Play It Again Sports to Dick's Sporting Goods.
Right.
I have a list on my phone of, again, tracking that too, of contact info, phone numbers, submission requirements or details. Like Dick's Sporting Goods doesn't actually allow you to call anybody at their buying department. You are given an address and you send the product. And
Oh,
if you hear
okay.
back, congrats. If you don't hear
Right.
back, you don't
You
hear
got your
back.
answer, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've done that. I contacted over 250 Play It Again Sports locations, and we were actually in a few of them, which is they're going very well. And
Yeah.
I'm in Berghardt Sporting Goods as well, which is a smaller retailer in Wisconsin. Reached out to Shields, which is a Midwest and I
Yeah.
think a little bit on the West Coast sporting goods store. And I knew them because I went to Shields growing up. They're based in Fargo, North Dakota, but they're very popular in Minnesota. So every summer we would go shopping at Shields, and I
Right.
was able to actually get on the call on a call with their buying department. They love the product, and as things happen, right, they agree to put um, X amount of units in their top 3 stores. That was our deal. They were going to be in Colorado, in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, or yep, Eden Prairie, Minnesota, and in Texas. I can't
Okay.
remember where in Texas, but
Yeah.
they were going to put our single leg tights in those their 3 biggest stores. And, as time goes on, they're dealing with issues of restocks due to COVID.
Right.
Stuff is stuck at the ports. They're not sure how much inventory is going to be coming in. So they want to save room for, obviously, Nike takes priority and Under
Right.
Armour takes priority. So
Yeah.
eventually that fizzles out. And now can't reach out to them without, I'm not going to hear back. So
Right.
it's pretty frustrating. And
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to a lot of small businesses, especially in the apparel or consumer product industries that want to get into retail. But at the end of the day, my mom's a math teacher, so I love looking at numbers. I've been able to build out some financial charts and projections, and obviously, like, it's no surprise that the business is most profitable when we sell on our e-commerce site. So
Right.
the
Okay.
reason I've given up on reaching out, at least initially, is because I want to focus on our paid media campaigns that are going to be starting soon, website optimizations,
Right.
social content, right? And be able to build enough of a following and consistent revenue stream. And maybe, who knows, with that, the brand awareness will increase and maybe someone from a retailer will reach out to me. But yeah, so that's pretty much where we've settled, and our margins are so much better on our e-commerce site. So my hope is when we get the women's compression shirts up and these 2 new products that are going to be coming, and I also have a stretch idea that I'm going to be pursuing probably next year. When we get those products in and up and selling and our paid media is consistent,
Right.
then I'll start to reach out again once we have a little bit more of a solid base underneath the brand. So
Right.
yeah.
No, that's awesome. Now, was there ever a point? I mean, let's face it, the fashion industry is very fickle. I mean, what's hot today is not tomorrow. And then, like you say, you've named probably 2 of the biggest, right? Nike and Under Armour, especially in the sports apparel.
Mm-hmm.
What would make you think that, Brandon Rogers from, Minnesota could even compete with these guys? Like, did you have that in the back of your mind? Oh, I'm going to go, head to head with the big boys, or were you ever afraid that, oh shit, they're going to eat me alive, so why even try? Like, did any of
Yep.
that ever enter your mind?
That was that was my biggest concern, right? That you mentioned pretty early in this interview. There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are not looking actively, but passively, that thing in the back of their head is telling them, oh, it's not ready yet. I'm not
Right.
going to make it, don't even try.
Yeah.
I just said, screw it. I'm doing it. And I while I was preparing to build this brand during COVID, I tried to come up with a few different ways that the brand could differentiate. And originally it was 3. Now I'm down to 2 that we've really honed in on. And I think that they do a good job of allowing us to differentiate even today, right? So
Right.
to give you some background, we beat Nike to market. Nike actually came out with their own version of single leg tights. They did a collaboration with Drake's Nocta brand.
Okay.
But we actually beat them to market by 17 months with
17
our
months.
single leg
Yeah.
tights.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see stuff like that, because those tights were selling for $75 and then reselling on StockX for $250.
Right.
And we have a very similar product, I would argue better, because we've gotten reviews from our customers. Even NBA players say that they like our tights better than the Nike ones they get from the NBA. But
Right.
it's reassuring to see that, right? So the two differentiating factors I'll say are: one, everything that we sell now and in the future will be asymmetrical in either design or structure. So really, really honing in on that overlap between fashion and sports.
Yeah.
There's the runway is now in NBA stadiums, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's in, before a football game,
Yeah.
basketball game, guys are wearing anything that, like Kyle Kuzma is a great example. He's wearing some ridiculous stuff, but it shows, and
Yeah.
it gets views, it gets results, and it gets him probably better brand deals and
Right.
some
For sure.
additional revenue streams, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the athlete that we're targeting with these products, is those
Right.
athletes that want to stand out in a crowd.
Yeah.
These are products that have a functional aspect to them, and I'll get into that, but they're more purchased. I polled our followers. They're the 65% of our followers purchased, or customers purchased, because of the fashion aspect.
Right.
Now, I say that though, to counter and say there is also a functionality side of it. So this is a good story. When I was back home last Christmas, I'm just, sitting at my parents' kitchen table eating lunch, and I get a phone call from a woman in Canada. And she says, is this Level Sportswear? And I say, yes, how can I help you? And she has a genetic disease where I think there was an issue with her right knee. And so she needed compression, but she only wanted it on one leg. And
Okay.
she's like, I have been looking for a product like yours for my whole life. And she wears a knee brace, and the leg sleeve the default leg sleeve that comes with the knee brace is incredibly uncomfortable. And she says she's tried other leg sleeves. She's tried cutting, compression gear. Those come unraveled. Leg
Yeah.
sleeves fall
Yeah.
your leg when you walk. So there's all kind of issues. And so she's like, this product would be perfect. So she purchased 2 pairs, emails me a few days later after she got them, and she's like, this is incredible. They're amazing. And so
Right.
I didn't even think about that
Right. Yeah.
initially starting the brand. And
Yeah.
now we do have that additional target market of people that need it for medical purposes.
Right.
Right. So that was awesome to see as well. And then, sorry, going back, our first differentiating factor is the asymmetry, right? The devotion to asymmetry.
Yeah.
The second one is a concept that I'm calling limited branding. So if you look at pretty much every Nike, Under Armour, Adidas product on the market today, they have slapped a logo out where everyone can see it, and
Right.
it turns the wearer into a walking advertisement for the brand.
Yes.
Now I get it. It's an effective strategy, right? And it's why brands like Louis Vuitton can charge $200 for a t-shirt,
Yeah.
and Gap can't. But to flip that, right? And kind of going off like Japanese culture of doing things crazy and out there, to flip that on its head, I said, okay, J.R. Smith just got in trouble and fined a few years ago for wearing a Supreme arm sleeve. What if we could do something completely opposite of what all these other sportswear brands are doing, and only brand our apparel in places that can be covered up, in game worn apparel that can be
Oh,
covered
okay.
up?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're not going to run athletes into sponsorship conflicts at all. You can wear
Right.
our gear, wear what's comfortable for you, and not have to worry about it. And another story is, back when I was in high school, I had my favorite pairs of black and white Nike full length compression tights.
Yeah.
When I get to college, my college is sponsored by Under Armour, and I
Right.
wasn't allowed to wear those compression tights. I had to go out and purchase all new Under Armour compression tights, because if
Right.
the Under Armour rep showed up at a game and saw me wearing those, we'd get in trouble.
Yeah.
A logo should not determine what an athlete wants to wear. I understand that there's sponsorships, and I understand there's brand deals and everything, but especially at the college level, maybe even at the professional level. It's why a lot of NBA, WNBA, PLL players wear our gear today, because they can wear what's comfortable, what makes them look good,
Right.
without running into that conflict. So
Right.
those two are the biggest differentiating factors for us. And I'm really trying to hone in on that. Like I said, the products that are on their way are going to be, they're going to be head turners. They're going to be pretty interesting. And, you know, to stay ahead of the curve, well, I like to say a first mover or category creator
Yeah.
in this asymmetrical sportswear space, that's what's going to allow us to differentiate and compete with Nike and Under Armour. Because if I'm first, this is actually a great story about, it overlaps with me being in SEO. I was able, because I was the first brand to create the Ace compression shirt or asymmetrical compression shirt.
Right.
I am now ranking on Google and Bing and you know, all the search engines that people search on nowadays for the brand, or for the term Ace compression shirt.
Okay.
I was able to capitalize on that because Levels was the first mover, the original creator of that name, of that product, and now I'm able to capitalize on all that traffic. So
Right.
it's actually pretty crazy. The search volume for Ace compression shirt has actually overtaken Levels or Levels Sportswear,
Okay.
because people see the product
Right.
and
Yeah.
they now associate that. So even if Nike were to come out with an Ace compression shirt, one, that would be awesome because I would totally take credit for them
Yeah.
copying the name.
Yeah.
But two, I was there. I was able, Levels was able to get there first, right? And so we'll be able to capitalize on all that additional traffic. So
Right.
if you're going to start a company, this is what I always like to tell people that reach out to me, or even if you run a company right now and you're looking for additional traffic, try to adjust something or tweak something or even create something from scratch, like I was able to do with these two products right now, and give it a new name. Give it a name that makes sense, but it's unique and genuine. Don't call it a pink jeans, or don't call it red t-shirts.
Right.
Call it something unique, and then just pump out tons of content using that name so that people start to associate Kleenex with the brand Kleenex, right?
Right.
Same thing with Ace compression shirts, same thing with, you know, a lot of the products today that we don't, Band-Aid, we don't really know, or people don't really know what the true technical term for them is. So
Right. Yeah.
it's an interesting strategy that people don't often think about, but it's another way that we're able to differentiate from some of those larger players.
Right. No, and that's awesome. And that in itself, you know, the marketing and SEO. I mean, I could have you back just to talk about that, because that is probably one of the toughest areas. You know, you could have the best product in the world, and if nobody hears about it, nobody sees it, you know, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
So that part, that's a cool concept that you added there. Come up with, does not necessarily have to be different, but name it different and
Yep.
capitalize on that. So
Exactly.
that's cool. That's
Yep.
very cool. So, and I like too that, you know, you talked about the lady from Canada who called. I like the fact that there was an avenue you haven't even considered that
Mm-hmm.
somebody brought to light, and you were open to it. You know, it's just not like, no, closed minded. No, we're sports apparel. You
Mm-hmm.
have to, you know, be willing to go down a different road, because sometimes, like you say, you may not be competing with people in that industry that are the Nikes and the Under Armours. You may be the next Nike and Under Armour in that area. So you always
Right.
got to be open to what people may bring your way, even though you thought, nope, that's not who we are and that's not what we do. So
And I think in that same regard, right, it's a medical solution. And what people don't often realize is arm sleeves or shooting sleeves were also born out of a medical solution.
right.
So in, I think it was January 19th or January 20th of 2001, Allen Iverson was suffering from elbow bursitis. So he had to go get surgery, but he was, you know, being like most athletes are and saying to his trainer, no, I'm fine.
I'm
Just
good. I'm
wrap me, or
good.
do, I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keep me in, coach.
Yeah.
And his trainer, Lenny Courier, just goes over and gets a swath of spandex material, right? It was essentially pantyhose.
Right.
And he cuts off a little section of it and he pulls it up over his
Pulls it
arm
up over his arm. Right.
to provide some extra compression, and that to help the elbow bursitis. And he ends up dropping 50 that game and ends up averaging 35, taking the Sixers to the playoffs that year.
Right.
Then the arm sleeve takes off and he never takes it off. Same situation, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not like it was, could have been designed for knee inflammation or to provide
Right.
some comfort under a knee brace.
Yeah.
That's why I was so open to it, because I was like, oh, there's a lot of correlation here. And to go back to your earlier point about like the longevity and the the trendy nature of a lot of these products,
Right.
the arm sleeve, that was 2001.
Yeah.
Arm sleeves are still very, very popular. So that's why I'm pretty confident that even though this is a new trend, I think it's going to be pretty consistent here in the next few years.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And you always got to be, you know, ride the wave of the old stuff or prepare to bring out the new stuff like you're
Right.
doing. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. So, you know, before we start wrapping things up here, talk to me a little bit about, because I don't know if a lot of the listeners be involved with this, with you know, trademarking and patents. And I know, you know, that's a whole other game in itself, but just maybe drop a little bit of knowledge on that for what you had to go through with that.
Yeah. My stance on that has changed drastically since when I first filed.
Right.
Lawyers are expensive.
Yes, they are.
Lawyers are very, very expensive. I have had two lawyers or legal teams help me.
Right.
Um, one I think was $395 an hour, and the other is now $495 an hour just for a phone call or to
Yes.
email back and forth.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. If you don't have the capital, be
Right.
a first mover. Try to capitalize on that early traffic, on that early, trend to the product or service, whatever you're selling. Um, I the first lawyer that I went through was based in Maryland, and they were able to help me with a trademark and patent search. Um, Ended up adding a little bit of a differentiator to our single leg tights, and so that's patent pending right now.
Right.
But I had to add a little bit of a differentiator because there was an existing product out there. And so I was able to do the search with this one company or legal team, and then I was able to get contact or connected with a separate one through a friend of a friend who I trusted a little bit more, and they've been helping me, but they're more expensive.
Right.
So um, the trademark is a cheaper process, and there's two different types of patents. You can get a utility patent or a design patent. Utility patent is it offers some sort of differentiating utility, right? So, for example, if it's a mouse, um, is the mouse offering you some sort of different utility as opposed to just being the color red versus the color black, right?
Right.
Design would be, if you want to qualify for a design patent, then adding a cool feature or a different material, that's where you're going to pursue a design patent. And that's what I actually had to pursue because the utility patent was actually no longer available. And there's also the issue that you have to account for of I don't know what the legal term for it is, but it's when you present your product or sell your product out into the world, you
Right.
have 1 year before your expiration date of when you can apply for a design patent.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
that's another issue that I ran into was I was cutting it very close because I didn't even think about it. I
Didn't
didn't
know.
know about
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And I had, like I said, I'd been documenting my story on Instagram and Facebook, and I had been showing the product off, and I barely made the cut of a year before I had to file for that patent. And I
Right.
was lucky enough to get it in. But if you're, interested in doing that, make sure you keep that in mind. I'm not sure what the date is on a design or a utility patent. I might be the same, but definitely do some research. Um, yeah, so I was able to get the trademark and the patent for the single leg tights in, and now we're running into a lot of issues with the trademark because there's companies in there's a company in California that has the word LVLS pending, but they haven't used it for
Oh,
2 years,
okay.
and it's
Right.
it's expired, but they've renewed it, so now I have to pretty much wait. Um, and I thought I was going to get lucky, and once it expired, I was able to just slide right in and
Yeah.
take advantage. But they've renewed it for some reason, but they're not using it for anything, so it's a little bit weird. So you might
Right.
run into some odd issues like that as well, some
Right.
odd conflicts. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think what else would be valuable as far as patenting. So the reason I say that my stance has changed on this topic is
Yeah.
because if you get a let's work through hypotheticals here, right? Let's say I get this patent, and then Nike comes out with their single leg tights again. They've stopped selling them, but there was a limited drop. But let's say that they do, and then Under Armour comes out with some. There's thousands of knockoffs on Amazon and
Right.
Walmart nowadays, right? If I get the patent, what am I gonna? I don't have the capital to pay for a legal team to
To
pursue all of
go and
those. And
sue everybody, right?
exactly. So
Yeah.
I will have this patent, and it'll pretty much be useless. The only reason it would be valuable is if I end up selling the company and
Selling the
exiting,
company,
and that
right?
intellectual property is what they're able to capitalize on. So I mean, I'm happy I'm going through it, and I'm happy I could still get it.
Yeah.
Still, like I said, it's still patent pending. But if you're early in the process, right, and you don't have a lot to throw at this, I would say try alternate routes. Try if it's a software product, right? It's going to be a little bit easier because you have that intellectual property. You're the one that built it. If no
Right.
one can really deconstruct it, if there's like some gated system to it, right, that you can protect it a little bit better. If you are like Coca-Cola and you have a recipe that it's going to be very difficult to deconstruct, you can
Right.
protect that a little bit, right? But it's like I said, it's going to be very difficult if you have a physical product and you don't have the capital to either pursue the patent or defend the patent. So if
Yeah.
I could do it all over again, I actually wouldn't get the patent because I would have so much more inventory to then use on paid media and on inventory.
Right.
So it's a little bit tough, right? Because you have to either be extremely risky and go to a bank and take out a loan or try to get an SBA loan, whatever your avenues are, investors,
Yeah.
right? That adds a lot of risk, and
Yeah.
that's an avenue that I didn't want to go down just yet because I want to see if I can bootstrap this thing as long as possible.
Right.
So
Sure.
figure out where your priorities lie. If you're more risk averse, act accordingly. So it's a tough subject because it really depends on the person.
Right. Yeah. No, and that's great advice because, like you say, all the patent in the world doesn't mean anything if you don't have the money to help you out
Exactly.
if you need to. So,
Yeah.
but no, that's great advice. So, is there any advice you would give, looking back now over what you've documented, that somebody's looking at getting into the fashion world, right? And that's, I've done a lot of shit in my life. Fashion is not one I've ever thought of. I've dabbled with the fragrance side of things, but not the fashion side. So, if you were to start again, if you were to give some advice, you talked about mentorship, and I preach that all day long. It's probably, the best thing you can do for yourself is get yourself a mentor. So here you are, you're the fashion mentor. What kind of advice are you going to give for somebody just looking to start out?
The most important thing I say to everybody that questions me about this is creativity and differentiation. It is so easy to slap a logo on a t-shirt and call it a t-shirt brand,
Right.
right? That's easy, which is why everyone does it, which is why it's incredibly difficult to make any money and grow the
Right.
brand and capitalize on any of that. You have to find ways to push traditional industries or legacy industries in new ways that make people turn their heads, that make people scratch their heads, that confuse people, that anger people, right?
Right. Yeah.
You have to find ways to differentiate, and that comes with creativity. I think creativity is the number one, most important feature of an entrepreneur, aspect, characteristic of an entrepreneur to have.
Right.
So that's number one. It gets there's a pretty big drop off between that and like the next 2,000 that you'll need, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and it also depends on the industry. So I guess as far as if someone were to come with me in the apparel space and they have a unique product that really stands out, then my next question is going to be, okay, what is your target market and how and why are they going to like it? How are you going to talk to them, right? Are you going to be the humorous brand like Slim Jim? Or are you going to be the more sophisticated, we're here for the athletes like a Nike? And then
Right.
you really have to hone that in. And a lot of times it's just going to take time. You just have to fail a lot. I look
Right.
back on some of the early graphics and the early logos that I designed for this company, and they're horrible. They're terrible.
But you probably didn't think that at the time.
I thought they were awesome at the
Yeah.
time. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just going to take time, and it sucks because I wish I could just implant everything that I've gone through so that entrepreneur will know. But a lot of the times it'll bring you down an avenue that you wouldn't even have thought
Right.
to go down
Right.
because you were able to go experience all those setbacks and
Yeah.
successes, whatever it may be. So like a lot of the products that we sell right now, a lot of the designs, a lot of the social media content is all a result of tried that. Nope. Didn't like it.
Right.
Nope. Failed. Nah, that didn't hit as well as I thought it would. Let's keep going with a different route.
Yeah.
Test as much as possible. And that even goes for your personal life, right? I'm learning how to code. I'm learning 3D CAD design. I learned Photoshop. Like test everything that you can get your hands on, figure out what you're really good at. And that you might even be able to rope that into your brand, and
Right.
your enthusiasm will help it take off even more so.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I'm glad you brought up failure. And, you said fail and try again. And I think you have to be able to truly appreciate the success. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think back to where you talked about, when those first prototypes came and you saw it, actually, holy, here it actually is, that's a proud moment. That's a proud papa moment, right? Like I've
Oh yeah.
always said, your businesses are your children, right? We bring them
Yep.
up from, concept. We were just thinking about them and now here they are. But if you have it handed to you, and it's like anything, like you said, even life, if you have it handed to you, you don't appreciate it as much as if you worked for it, you failed, you worked for it, you failed, and then all of a sudden there it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Yep.
that's
And
great.
to that point, right? I like to share this because it is probably one of my biggest failures when running this company was that factory that was about to close down. We were actually in the process of prototyping some asymmetrical t-shirts,
Right.
and they were rushing, right, to just get it out the door. And I was kind of a little bit, feeling a little bit sped up because of their lack of timeline, right?
Yeah.
And so I just said, all right, screw it. Let's just go to bulk production and send it over. Those I paid about $3,500 for 200 t-shirts, and when they got here, they were 100% cotton, very thick, not athletic at all, not stretchy. I
Right.
couldn't really get the neck over my head because they didn't stretch very, very well, because it was terrible.
Right.
I ended up having to just donate those and cancel that line, and it was very, very tough because for a small business, that's $3,500
Thirty
that I
five hundred
could have
dollars.
used.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to happen. But because of that, now I'm able to communicate with my factory, and we go through 3 or 4 different prototyping iterations before I'm even thinking about placing a bulk order. So
Right.
it's trial and error for everybody. Yeah.
Right. No, that's great. Listen, Brandon, you know what? I've kept you for an hour, and like I said, everything we've talked about, we could probably break it down and talk for an hour. I wouldn't mind having you back sometime to talk about just SEO and marketing. We didn't even really get to
Yeah.
touch on that much, but I think you've got a great product. Like I said, I showed it to my son. We'll be placing an order afterwards. He's a football player, but like we talked about before too, right? With the younger guys, especially, I'll say maybe the football, maybe basketball as well. It's about the drip, right? It's about
Yep.
look at me, right? And
Yep.
when it can be functional and look at me, well, now you're onto something. So, and that sounds like
Yeah.
what you got. So, I appreciate it. So, any last words before we wrap things up?
I think I've said this enough, but please reach out to me if you're an entrepreneur and you maybe need some mentorship, or you just want to ask me some questions, need some advice. I'm always answering DMs on our Levels Instagram and my personal, which I can give out
Yeah,
to
go
you
ahead.
to put in the show notes, or I guess I could do it right now. It's
Yeah,
just
you can do it now. Go ahead.
Brandon 11 Rogers is my Instagram account. I probably will be most responsive on there. So reach out to me personally, or just DM the brand. We're on all social media platforms as just Level Sportswear, LVLS Sportswear. Um, and yeah, to all the entrepreneurs out there, I'm working on a number of other projects that have to do with that sort of journaling and that entrepreneurial journey, because I love entrepreneurship. Like I said, it's
Yeah.
podcasts, books, networking events, whatever I can get my hands on, I'm all for it. So please reach out to me. Don't be hesitant to take that leap and just contact that manufacturer or launch that website, whatever it may be. Go for it, because it's a lot of fun, and I can guarantee, like, I've learned more in the past 2 years of running this business than I did in 4 years of college. So
Right.
it's an awesome journey. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, listen, Entrepreneur Nation, you know what? We will put Brandon's contact information in the show notes so you can check it out and check out the website and everything. But I want to thank you for allowing, taking this hour, allowing Brandon and I into your lives. I hope you got some education. I'm sure you did. If you didn't, you either fell asleep or you're listening to the wrong show. But, some education, some inspiration. Like I said, here's a young guy. You know what? I know he's mid-20s, started this in COVID and hasn't looked back. So stop with the excuses, right? Let's take the time, do your research, and let's turn those dreams into reality. Now, I don't have a golden nugget prepared. I was kind of, I got caught up in some other things. Normally, I drop a little bit of wisdom. I think Brandon has helped us with that. He's left us with some wisdom. So I'm going to wrap it up like that. As always, if you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe button. I want to take this journey with you. Entrepreneurship is my life. I love it. Like Brandon says, you know what? There's no other thing that you're going to find brings you more joy, and more happiness and more frustration on some days, but you forget the frustration after it all comes together. You forget that frustration. So once again, Brandon, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And Entrepreneur Nation, see you soon. Stay safe.